It's 8 minutes to 7. The government is failing to learn the lessons of IT projects that went wrong at vast expense. That is the view of MPs on the Public Accounts Committee, who looked in detail at one project aimed at enabling data from GP surgeries to be used elsewhere in the NHS. The Conservative MP Richard Bacon is a member of the committee and joins us from our Norwich studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
What went wrong with this project?
Well, several things. It was late, it was over budget, it doesn't work properly. Essentially, the people running it didn't have the right skills, and there were 10 project managers in 5 years. And when you have that many people in charge, effectively you have no one in charge. The contractor, Atos, we felt also didn't really show an appropriate level of duty of care to the taxpayer, and we've asked the Cabinet Office to look at that. But the fundamental problem is that Whitehall makes the same mistakes again and again, whether it's the Child Support Agency or the Passport Agency or the Rural Payments Agency and so on, without learning the mistakes of past failures. Now, that's perfectly possible to do, but in Whitehall it doesn't happen.
But from the contractor's point of view, Atos themselves, who you singled out in your report, have said that they were one of 8 suppliers and they weren't acting as the system integrator.
No. Well, I think at the end of the day, you do have to share the blame around, and some of the blame must go to the buyers. It is quite difficult to do good work for a bad client, and government is very often a weak client. As I mentioned, there were 10 project managers of this in 5 years. And
were the project managers being on the civil servant, the government side, so
yes,
the buyers?
That's right. Exactly. Right. And many of them didn't have the right skills. So you've got to make sure that you've got the right people in place, and very often government doesn't do that, or if it does, then they're quickly moved on without any reference to what's good for the project. So there's a lot that needs changing. But the fundamental problem is that when there is a failure, there isn't the kind of openness and honesty that you need to have in order to get proper learning. We've seen this with other projects like the Universal Credit and indeed with the single farm payment, where quite often in government IT projects they suffer from what you might call a good news culture. So, for example, if you compare it with the aviation industry, when anything goes wrong, there's very great openness about failures of all kinds, and that has led to steady incremental improvements in safety. And if you had that kind of openness and honest communication in the way we run public sector IT projects, you would start to see steady improvements there as well.
Yes, and from what you're saying, then it would seem that the conclusion is that much more of the blame lies with the buyers of the services and those who are planning and paying for these projects and not managing them properly, rather than the contractors.
Well, I don't think that the contractor did a particularly good job, and we felt that the witness from the contractor who attended our inquiry did not show a great deal of concern for the plight of the client, if I can put it that way. But you are quite right. There is a heavy burden placed on the buyers to get this right and to make sure that they're doing a good job. This is £40 million of public money, and there's not a great deal to show for it yet. Now, I hate to say this, but in the grand scheme of things for the NHS, that is not a huge amount of money, despite the fact that it would have paid for the community beds in my hospital that I've been fighting like an alley cat to protect for the next 96 years. The NHS doesn't put senior people in charge of these projects, and it doesn't make sure that they stay in charge until this thing is seen through properly. And that is what's got to change.
Richard Bacon MP, thank you.